They were strangers delayed by fate, just two missed flights, one unexpected connection, and a decision that could change everything. What if the layover of your life led you to the love of it? Hello family, welcome to Storytime with Imzi. Please subscribe and like, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The first thing Amelia Morgan noticed was the static hum of tension in the air, the kind unique to international terminals. A chorus of impatient sighs, rolling luggage wheels, and boarding calls in 3 languages filled the space like a restless symphony. She stood near gate 22, camera bag slung across her shoulder, her checked flannel shirt half untucked and wrinkled from sitting too long. The digital board above flickered with an ominous yellow delayed, estimated departure, 1945. Again, the 3rd time in the last hour. She let out a frustrated breath, sharp and audible, and paced 3 slow steps forward before abruptly turning on her heel. Her boots tapped lightly on the linoleum floor like a ticking clock, echoing her impatience. Across the seating area, Caleb Rivers looked up from his tattered copy of A Movable Feast and saw her for the 2nd time in 10 minutes. She hadn't sat down once. Not even a sip from her half-empty coffee cup, now abandoned on a window ledge. He tried to focus on Hemingway's crisp prose, but her energy pulled at him like static cling. She was kinetic, irritated, and he had to admit, interesting. Amelia checked her phone for the 5th time. No new updates from the airline. No Wi-Fi. No texts. Just her own annoyed reflection in the black screen. She rubbed her temples and muttered under her breath, "Of course. Barcelona's cursed." She spun around to find a free charger and locked eyes with him for a heartbeat. He quickly looked down at his book, but it was too late. He'd been caught. She tilted her head, smirked, and walked straight toward the charging station, which only had one outlet available, right next to his. "Mind if I invade your space?" she asked, voice dry but not unfriendly. Caleb shook his head. "Be my guest. It's not like we're going anywhere." She crouched to plug in her phone, then stood and leaned her hip against the pole. "You going to Barcelona too?" He nodded, marking his place with a faded train ticket. "Yeah, eventually, assuming the universe stops playing games." She chuckled, just a short one, but it softened her eyes. "Figures. I was supposed to be there 2 days ago. A shoot got rescheduled, and now this." She waved toward the gate like it personally offended her. He extended a hand. "Caleb, professor of ancient books and accidental airport philosopher." She shook it. "Amelia, photographer, frequent flyer, professional grumbler." Their handshake lingered a second longer than necessary. "Have you tried the coffee?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, you mean the hot brown sadness they sell downstairs?" "Yeah, it's a crime against beans." He laughed, genuinely, shoulders shaking. "Well said." There was a pause. The terminal's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. From the far corner, a toddler wailed as his mother rummaged in a backpack. "You know," Amelia said after a moment, eyes flicking to his book, "reading Hemingway in a delayed terminal is a bit poetic, don't you think?" He smiled. "Tragic, too. Even better." They both grinned. The delay didn't feel quite so long anymore. Amelia stood a few paces from the terminal windows, phone pressed to her ear, voice clipped and low, but tense enough to bleed through the white noise of the airport. Caleb didn't mean to listen. He really didn't. But it was hard not to catch fragments of her words in the quiet moments between announcements. "No, Marcus, I told you. I sent the full portfolio last week. If they wanted brighter colors, they should have mentioned that before the deadline." She ran a hand through her dark curls, pacing like a caged animal. Her free hand gestured wildly, punctuating her frustration in invisible flourishes. From his seat, Caleb tried to return to his book, but he found himself tracking her movement with idle curiosity, like watching the wind play with a flag. Don't start with the "we expected more" line. I've done 6 campaigns for them. 6. And now suddenly I'm too what? Edgy. Real. A pause. Her voice dipped lower, trembling at the edges. "No, it's fine. I get it. Tell them thanks for the opportunity." Click. She didn't sigh right away. Instead, she stood completely still for a few seconds, phone still in hand, eyes staring out the tall windows where the tarmac glowed under dull twilight. A single plane taxied across the runway like it had somewhere better to be. Caleb cleared his throat gently and raised a coffee cup toward her as she returned to the charging station. "Still terrible," he said. "But the bitterness helps with the waiting." Amelia took the cup from him without hesitation, took a small sip, and winced. "You were right. This is like punishment in liquid form." "Shared suffering builds camaraderie," he said, half joking. She handed it back, a small grateful smile cracking the tired lines around her mouth. "I needed that. Thanks." Caleb hesitated, then said carefully, "I overheard a bit. The phone call. Sorry, it wasn't intentional." Amelia waved him off. "Don't worry about it. Airport walls have ears. And anyway, it's not like it's some big secret. Just another day in the glamorous world of freelance disappointment." She sat down beside him for the first time, curling her knees toward herself and tucking her camera bag at her feet. The shoot was for this big outdoor lifestyle brand. They liked my style when it was raw and authentic. But now they want sunlit smiles and soft filters. Basically fake. I take it fake isn't your specialty? I shoot real. Emotion. Shadows. Sweat and skin and sky that doesn't always look like a postcard. And now I'm being told it's off-brand. She made air quotes with a sarcastic flourish. Funny how the same thing they praised me for is now a problem. Caleb nodded slowly. That's the curse of having a point of view. Sooner or later, someone wants to flatten it. Amelia looked at him sideways. You teach literature, right? Guilty. You sound like a quote. He chuckled. Probably stole that from a dead poet. There was a pause. One of those soft, suspended moments that hangs comfortably between two people who are unexpectedly sinking. I'm sorry, she said, shaking her head. I'm being a downer. Not at all. You're being honest. She looked down at her boots, suddenly shy. It's weird talking to a stranger like this. Not even my friends get this much from me. Caleb tapped the armrest between them. Airport rule, strangers don't count. You can say anything, and when the gate opens, it disappears into the sky. She smiled at that. A real smile this time. Well then, she said, sitting back in her chair. What's your tragic airport confession? Caleb looked away, out the same terminal window she had stared through earlier. I'm going to Barcelona because I haven't done anything spontaneous in, well, too long. I teach other people to live through stories, but I stopped living my own. My marriage ended last year. No drama, just erosion. I didn't even notice how quiet everything had gotten until it was all gone. He blinked, surprised at himself. See, Amelia said gently. Strangers don't count. Their names were called for boarding check. Except it wasn't boarding, it was another delay. 90 more minutes. Amelia groaned and sank deeper into her chair. The universe is clearly telling us something. Caleb raised an eyebrow. Like what? She looked at him. That maybe we're not done talking yet. When the fourth delay turned into a full cancellation, the terminal transformed into a hive of quiet chaos. Passengers scrambled for their phones. Others lined up in front of the help desk like it was the last oasis in a desert. A child near gate 21 began to cry. Not a tired whimper, but the full-body kind of crying that made Caleb want to join in. Amelia let her head fall back against the seat, eyes closed. This is the kind of travel day that turns people into villains in origin stories. Caleb laughed, rubbing a hand over his face. Let me guess, no flights until tomorrow? A voice over the intercom confirmed it. All outbound flights delayed until morning due to severe weather over the Atlantic. The line at the counter was already 20 deep. All right, Amelia said, popping up from her seat. We hustle now, or we sleep on floor tiles. Caleb stood slowly. Lead the way, Captain. They maneuvered together through the sea of passengers, Amelia walking with quick precision, Caleb weaving behind her with practiced patience. She had a kind of fast-twitch confidence, always a second ahead. He admired it. How her frustration didn't stop her from taking action. The airline desk was no help. We can rebook you for the 9:30 a.m. flight, the woman behind the counter said, monotone and unbothered. Hotel vouchers are available, but limited. Amelia snatched two just in time. Where's the hotel? Caleb asked as they made their way toward the exit. She skimmed the paper, brow furrowing. Something in Madrid's outer district. A boutique place with, get this, airport shuttle upon request, which I'm pretty sure is code for you're walking. Outside, the air was thick with the smell of jet fuel and summer rain. The shuttle stop was a small metal shelter with a flickering fluorescent light. Two couples already stood there, arguing in a language Caleb couldn't place. A single cab idled at the curb. They looked at each other. "I'll split it with you," she said quickly. "But I get window." "Fair trade." Inside the cab, the driver nodded, vaguely annoyed, and started the meter with a heavy hand. The windows were cracked just enough to let the warm night air sneak in. Streetlights streaked across Amelia's face as the car weaved through the industrial outskirts of Madrid. "So," she said, turning toward him, "do you always end up stranded in foreign cities with strange women?" "Only on the weekends," he replied. "Weekdays I stick to quiet regret and faculty meetings." She snorted, pulling a leg up into the seat. "You're surprisingly funny for someone who reads dead poets in airports." Caleb smiled but didn't answer. He watched her eyes instead, how they darted toward the window, flicked back to him, then away again. Like she didn't quite want to settle into this moment, but also didn't want to leave it. The hotel was small and charming, wedged between a tapas bar and a neon-lit pharmacy. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of oranges and wood polish. A sleepy concierge handed them 2 key cards. "Third floor. Rooms 308 and 310. Elevator is broken." Amelia let out a tired laugh. "Perfect." At the top of the narrow staircase, they paused in the hallway. Warm yellow lights buzzed faintly overhead. For a beat, neither of them moved. "I guess good night," Caleb said softly. "Yeah. Unless." She hesitated, chewing her lower lip. Then, more confidently, "There's a bar across the street. No flights, no plans. Wanna not plan together?" Caleb tilted his head, lips twitching. "Only if I get window seat this time." She rolled her eyes playfully and turned on her heel. "Deal." The bar across the street was narrow and low-lit, the kind of place where conversations melted into music and time hung soft in the air like perfume. Strings of faded paper lanterns bobbed above their heads as they sat in a corner booth, facing each other across a tiny wooden table already cluttered with 2 glasses of Rioja, a half-finished plate of olives, and a bowl of spicy almonds neither had asked for, but were now devouring. Amelia leaned back in her seat, her black boots kicked out in front of her, camera still slung across her chest like a second skin. "You know," she said, swirling the wine in her glass, "if this trip had gone according to plan, I'd be 3 hours into editing a surf shoot right now, staring at overexposed forearms and too many sun flares." Caleb smirked. "So, I'm basically your human delay. A walking weather advisory." She laughed. "No, you're like a plot twist. Unexpected, but maybe the story needed it." He blinked, surprised. Then, "That was oddly poetic." She shrugged. "I'm drunk on bad luck and good wine." Outside, the street was quiet except for the occasional buzz of a scooter zipping past. Inside, a jazz band warmed up near the bar, their trumpet player occasionally letting out soft, exploratory notes like he was whispering to the night. Caleb took a sip of wine and studied her in the flickering light. Amelia's eyes were intense, but not hard. The kind of eyes that stayed open just a second longer than necessary, like she wanted to remember everything. "So what are you really running from?" he asked gently. She smiled, but it was tight this time. "Who says I'm running? You never sit still," he said. "Even now, you're spinning your ring around your finger." Amelia looked down at her hand, then stopped. "Damn. Busted." She picked at a spot on the table. "All right. Full confession? I'm terrified of stillness. I spent years in one place, stuck, waiting for life to start. Then one day, I packed up my camera, left a job I hated, and decided I'd rather be tired and uncertain than numb and certain. Now I live out of suitcases and file taxes from coffee shops. And you're afraid if you stop, it'll all come rushing back? Something like that." Caleb nodded slowly. "I stayed too still for too long. You ran. I froze." She looked up. "You ever think maybe we were both trying to protect the same thing, just in opposite directions?" The trumpet player began a slow melody, something smoky and nostalgic. Caleb's gaze softened. "Yeah, I think about that a lot." They were quiet for a while. Not awkward, just suspended. The air between them changed, slowed, deepened. Outside, it began to drizzle, the raindrops blurring the glass and reflecting the golden glow of the street lamps. Amelia leaned forward, voice low. "What are you doing tomorrow?" Caleb smiled. "Hopefully getting on the plane this time." "No, I mean, what are you doing tomorrow? Once you land. What's waiting for you?" He thought for a moment. "Nothing urgent. No lectures. No meetings. Just a room I rented for 2 weeks and a list of places I told myself I'd finally go see." "Then come with me," she said suddenly. "To my shoot. It's outdoors. Wild cliffs, jagged water, dramatic skies. The brand bailed, but I'm shooting it anyway. For me." He raised an eyebrow. "You're inviting a literature professor to a photography shoot?" "I'm inviting a fellow plot twist." Caleb looked at her, really looked. Her hair was slightly damp from the mist outside. Her cheeks were flushed from the wine. Her eyes steady and burning. And then he smiled, the kind that started deep and worked its way to his eyes. "All right, I'm in." The cliffs just outside Barcelona looked like something from another world. Raw, serrated edges kissing the wind, waves crashing so hard below they sent a mist rising like breath from the sea. Amelia stood at the edge, camera in hand, the strap cutting diagonally across her chest, her silhouette sharp against the streaky morning sky. Her boots gripped the uneven ground. The wind played with her curls. She turned slightly toward Caleb and shouted over the howl. "This is it." Caleb, still holding 2 paper cups of coffee and slightly out of breath from the hike, laughed. "You dragged me out of bed at 4:30 for this?" Amelia turned fully now, grinning. "You can go back to bed if you want. But this is the hour when the world forgets it's being watched. It's the best time to shoot." He handed her the coffee. "You say that like you're not also quietly enjoying watching me suffer." "Oh, I absolutely am." The sky bloomed. Shades of coral and lavender crept across the horizon. The wind softened just slightly, and a quiet settled over the cliffs, like even nature had paused to breathe. Amelia lifted her camera, focused, adjusted the lens. Caleb stood behind her, watching, not just her technique, but her whole being. There was something almost reverent in the way she worked. She wasn't clicking pictures, she was capturing communion. Light and shape and movement. "Story. What are you thinking?" she asked, eyes still in the viewfinder. "That you're a little terrifying when you're in your element." She laughed. "Good terrifying or run for the hills terrifying? Like watching a storm from a safe distance. Powerful. Unpredictable. Beautiful." She lowered the camera and turned slowly to face him. For a moment, neither of them said a word. The wind tugged at her sleeves, her fingers wrapped tightly around the coffee cup like she needed something to hold on to. "I don't let people in very easily," she said, almost too quietly. "I can tell. And I don't know what this is," she added quickly, gesturing vaguely between them. Caleb stepped closer. Not enough to overwhelm, just enough that she could feel the shift in the air. "I don't either," he said honestly. "But I'd rather find out than run away from it." Her eyes searched his, scanning for doubt, for insincerity. She found none. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she murmured. "I didn't plan on meeting anyone. I was supposed to fly in, shoot, and fly out." "You did fly in. We both just got rerouted." She smiled faintly, gaze dropping for a second, then lifting again with something softer behind it. "I've spent the last 3 years making every decision with one foot out the door," she said. "But last night felt different. Like, maybe the door doesn't have to be open all the time." Caleb nodded slowly. "You don't have to decide everything right now." Amelia looked out at the rising sun again. "No, just the next step." The light spilled over the edge of the cliff like liquid gold, illuminating everything it touched. Caleb felt it wash over them, warm and silent and new. She picked up her camera and handed it to him. "Here," she said, surprising him. "Point and shoot. Let the light surprise you." He took it clumsily. "And if I mess it up?" She shrugged. "Then it'll be real." They stood together in the wind, fingers brushing, laughter slowly forming between snapshots. And somewhere deep inside, neither of them could deny it anymore. This didn't feel like a detour. It felt like the beginning of something real. Back in the city, the hotel room Caleb had rented for his solo retreat now felt unfamiliar, with Amelia sitting on the edge of his bed, barefoot, still damp from the post-shoot shower, wrapped in one of the oversized white robes. She was scrolling through the photos from that morning, lips pursed in focus, eyes lit with something close to awe. Caleb leaned against the small desk by the window, arms crossed, watching her reaction more than the screen. "You have a good eye," she said, without looking up. "You picked the spot," he replied. "I just pressed the button." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You saw it. Framed it without thinking. Like you already knew what you wanted to keep." There was a pause. "Do you ever feel like something's happening before you have time to process it?" she asked, softer now. "Like your brain is still loading, but your heart already knows?" Caleb took a slow breath. "Every second since I met you." She looked up then, and the room changed. Not literally, of course. The furniture didn't shift, the walls didn't glow. But something in the air between them tightened, warmed, deepened. Like the world narrowed its focus. "I leave in 2 days," she said, her voice suddenly small. "I know. And then what?" she whispered. He crossed the room. Sat beside her. His hand found hers without hesitation, his thumb tracing slow, steady circles against her skin. "Then we don't pretend this didn't happen." Amelia's expression flickered. "You really think people can meet like this on accident and make it work?" Caleb smiled. "I think the best stories begin by accident." A knock interrupted them, soft and hesitant. "Room service." Caleb got up and opened the door to a tray of grilled vegetables, saffron rice, and 2 glasses of red wine. The waiter wheeled it in silently, cast a curious glance at the scene, and left without a word. They ate side by side on the bed, knees brushing. Not much was said, but every silence was full. Between bites, they glanced at each other, smiles forming mid-chew, laughter slipping out at nothing at all. It wasn't romantic in the grand, sweeping way books or movies might paint it. But it was honest, earnest, a kind of closeness you don't manufacture. You fall into it, like stumbling across a hidden street in a city you thought you already knew. Later, as the sky outside deepened into velvet and the wine disappeared slowly, Amelia turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared," she said. Caleb didn't ask why. He just took her hand again. "So am I." They didn't kiss that night. They didn't undress or make promises or fall into some breathless, cinematic tumble. What they did was lie beside each other, fully clothed, under the thin hotel blanket, listening to the hum of the city and the quiet pulsing of each other's hearts. When Amelia finally drifted to sleep, curled into his chest, Caleb stared up at the ceiling. He was no longer in transit. He had, in every way that mattered, arrived. The morning sunlight crept through the curtains slowly, like it was afraid to interrupt. Amelia stirred before Caleb did, blinking herself awake with a disoriented breath, as if unsure whether last night had been real or some half-remembered dream. She looked over at him, still asleep, one arm crooked behind his head, the other stretched toward where she'd been resting. Peaceful, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. She sat up slowly, careful not to wake him. Her robe had slipped off one shoulder. She pulled it tighter and padded quietly to the window. Outside, the city was already alive, cars, scooters, people navigating their lives like clockwork. It hit her then. She had a flight in 6 hours. And no idea what to do with the ache beginning to build in her chest. Amelia wasn't used to staying. She was used to packing, to slipping out of places before anything, or anyone, could convince her otherwise. She didn't want to leave this time. That scared her more than she wanted to admit. Behind her, Caleb stirred. "You always wake up before your thoughts do?" he murmured, eyes still half shut. She turned, arms crossed, leaning against the window. "My thoughts usually chase me out the door." He sat up slowly, raking a hand through his messy hair. "And today? They're telling me to run again," she said honestly. "But they're quieter than usual." He gave a small, sad smile. "I don't want to be another almost." "You're not," she said quickly, walking back to the bed. "You're not anything I expected. You're better. That's the problem." "Is it a problem?" She sat down beside him, their knees brushing again like they always seemed to. "I've built a whole life around movement, around not letting anyone become the reason I stay. Because I was afraid that if I stayed, I'd lose myself. That I'd shrink. And now," he asked gently. She looked up at him, eyes sharp, full of conflict and clarity all at once. "Now I'm wondering if I've been shrinking in other ways. Just slower. Quieter." He reached for her hand again, that now familiar touch grounding them both. Maybe staying doesn't have to mean standing still. She exhaled. There was no grand decision, no dramatic pact, but the space between them filled with something quiet and real. Recognition, maybe. Or permission. Amelia leaned into him, head resting on his shoulder. I want to see where this could go. Caleb kissed her forehead, soft, deliberate. Then stay. Or let me come with you. Or neither. Just don't pretend this didn't happen. She smiled, tears stinging slightly at the corners of her eyes. I won't. Outside, the sky brightened. It was still early. The world was still deciding what kind of day it would be. But inside that hotel room, two people had already made one choice. To stop running. Even if just for a little while. The airport was quieter this time. No thunderstorm, no gate changes, no panic. Just soft announcements echoing overhead and the scent of fresh espresso wafting from a nearby cafe. Morning light streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows on the polished floor. It was calm. Peaceful. Too peaceful, Amelia thought, standing in front of gate 22 again. She was early. That never happened. But she'd needed the stillness. One last chance to feel what this place meant, what it had unexpectedly come to mean. The rolling suitcase by her side felt heavier than usual. Not because of weight, but because this time, she wasn't just carrying gear. She was carrying possibility. Caleb approached a few minutes later, coffee in one hand, paper bag in the other. I brought the cinnamon croissant you liked. The one you said tasted like a lie. She smirked. Because it was one. There's no cinnamon in that thing. He handed it to her anyway. Still comforting, though. They stood in silence for a beat. The gate sign blinked behind them. Flight 723 to Lisbon, on time. Caleb broke the quiet. You sure about this? Amelia nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I need to see this trip through. Prove to myself I can still do it alone, but not because I'm afraid to do it with someone. He smiled at that. That sounds like you. She looked at him, really looked, and saw the same warm steadiness that had pulled her in from the moment they met. The same man who had helped her chase light on a cliffside, who had listened more than he spoke, who never once asked her to change, but had somehow made her want to. Come with me, she said, surprising them both. Caleb blinked. To Lisbon. To wherever. No plan. Just see where it leads. He smiled again, this time slower, fuller. I already told my department I'm extending my leave. Her eyebrows rose. Really? Yeah. There's this photographer I met. Kind of turned my life upside down. She laughed softly, the sound warm and unscripted. You're sure? Caleb nodded. Absolutely. The boarding announcement crackled over the speakers. Amelia looked toward the gate, then back at him. You ready for another story? He reached for her suitcase handle, took it like it belonged to him, like it had always been meant to be shared. With you, he said. Always. Together, they walked toward the gate. Not in a rush. Not afraid. Two strangers who missed a flight, and found something far more rare. Something that doesn't come with a reservation number or a departure time. Something real.